And we can start.
Yep.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special webinar to commemorate the 10 years of the Sagar Vision, which stands for Security and Growth for All in the region. A little bit about Sagar Vision. It was launched in the year 2015, and it's not just an acronym, it's a vision which was set by the government of India, and one that underscores India's commitment to peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. Today, we are going to take a moment to reflect on the journey, impact, and the future. And so when Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi first articulated the Sagar vision during his visit to Mauritius in 2015, the message was clear that India will be will do its part as a responsible maritime power. So let us use today's webinar to celebrate a decade of progress and speak dialogues on how we can shape the Sagar's next phase. During today's course of webinar, we will have a lot of presentations. We have 12 presentations in total, but a few of the presenters could not join. Just one person could not join, and we are expecting one more person in the second half. So there's a little bit of shift that you'll see as per the agenda note. We do have a lot of experts from the domain, including Ambassador Anup Mudgal and Professor P.V. Rao, who have joined us, and we'll soon be joined, and Captain Sarabjit Parmar also, who has been a part of our journey in the previous webinars as well. So I welcome all of you for today's webinar. Thank you for joining, and let us begin the discussion. But before we begin the discussion, I do have a few guidelines for the speakers and for the audience. So first, I'll dictate the speakers' guidelines that keep your presentation within the time frame of 8 to 10 minutes. Align your remarks with the theme, which is Sagar's evolution, impact, and future. And a soft bell or a screen reminder will be provided at the 9th minute while you're presenting, so that 1 extra minute can be used by you for wrapping up everything. And for the audience, I would request that all of you keep yourself muted when the presentations are on, so that we avoid background disturbances if at all that happens. And you can drop in your questions if you have in the chat box, which you can see at the right corner of your screen. So let us have the first presentation, and I'd like to call upon Dr. Commander Arnab Das, who is the founder and director of the Maritime Research Center, to make his keynote address and make the presentation on the topic UDA framework and the Sagar vision. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nishtha. I would also like to thank our speakers, my internal team, and of course, Ambassador Mudgal sir, Professor P.V. Rao, Captain Parmar sir, and Radhika ma'am will be joining soon. So I'm making the first presentation probably to just elaborate on how the UDA framework fits into the effective realization of the Sagar vision. I'll be covering under these heads. First and foremost, when we talk about the underwater domain awareness, we must keep in mind the tropical conditions. The Cold War era was the beginning of development of these technologies, but this was for the temperate waters. But today, the larger deployment of the underwater domain awareness is in the tropical waters. So that differentiation has to be understood and has to be prioritized whenever we want to talk about the UDA framework. And even the Sagar vision is very, very important in terms of its maritime connection. So the Indo-Pacific strategic space is what is now being prioritized by the global community. And by definition, the Indo-Pacific strategic space is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So again, the tropical waters become very, very critical here. Now, when we talk about the Indian Ocean region, it is in the middle of the tropical waters, and what is important here is India's position in the Indian Ocean is very, very unique. I mean, you can see the peninsula jetting out, and no other country in the region will have as much geopolitical and geostrategic relevance compared to India. So India has no choice but to play a leadership role, and which is aptly mentioned in the Sagar vision. Now, India in the 21st century, it is very important for us to take note. I mean, Sagar vision is one, but to support the Sagar vision, the government has also announced many other projects. So to support that also, we need to ensure that the underwater domain awareness becomes a key priority, which is yet to be given that priority. So the Sagar Mala, inland water transport, transboundary river management, multimodal transport, digital transformation, and Atmanirbharta, everything requires capacity and capability building at a different scale. Now, if we just focus on the Sagar vision itself, by definition, as aptly mentioned by the Honorable Prime Minister in his Shangri-La dialogue keynotes address, the security concerns in the IOR because of the political volatility, blue economic possibilities. I mean, being the tropical condition, there is huge opportunity for economic growth. But also we must realize that we are a 10,000-year-old civilization, so there is ample amount of traditional knowledge and practices which needs to be mapped in the present context. And then India's aspiration to play the leadership role in the Indian Ocean region is also. So here again, I mean, diplomatically, if we can extend the capacity and capability building in the region, that will automatically give us the leadership role that we desire. And more recently, the Honorable Prime Minister has also announced the Mahasagar, again back in Mauritius. So all this also gives us the direction that we need to focus on the maritime and the ocean in a very different way. Now, for any strategic purpose, people, economy, nature become the triple bottom line, as they say. I mean, the livelihood aspects, the coastal and riverine communities have to be given the kind of priority. Otherwise, many times they become victim of any so-called development in the maritime domain. And inclusive governance, so that they are part of the whole development process. Economic growth, of course, I mean, there'll be no reason if there is no economic growth. I mean, today, energy security and huge amount of undersea resources are available and needs to be exploited. But if we don't develop indigenous capabilities, we'll become victims of the extra-regional powers trying to manipulate us. And also, of course, the sustainability and the climate change aspect. And most important in the underwater domain is the acoustic habitat degradation that happens because of the anthropogenic activities that we carry out. Now, let us focus on the challenges. Now, we have a huge demographic challenge in this part of the world. I mean, not just in India, in the entire subcontinent. I mean, almost 25% of humanity resides in this part of the world. But if we are not able to give meaningful engagement to the aspirational young population and the young professionals, we will stare at a huge internal security issue also. So it is very important that we channelize their energy into something more constructive. Secondly, the diversity of indigenous community. I mean, on one end, we may claim that this is a big problem in terms of scaling up, but there's a huge amount of knowledge that resides, and how to map that using the modern digital transformation or digital technology to scale up this whole effort is something we need to look at. And here again, underwater domain awareness will play a very, very important role. Now, in terms of sediment transport, I mean, we are looking at huge amount of water transport in this region, and that's the most effective and cheapest, or we could say the most efficient. But the problem here is that unique sediment transport pattern creates a huge amount of navigational challenges. Now, if we don't do a thorough sediment transport study, we will not be able to channelize the navigability in this in these water bodies. I mean, whether it is coastal transportation or inland water transport. So, because we constantly keep on going to the Western countries or Western nations for supporting us in this, but they don't understand the tropical waters. So we have to understand the UDA in a very different perspective. How to make it sustainable? I mean, everybody is rushing towards a lot of opportunity that we see, but how to keep it sustainable is again very important, and UDA will play an important part. Climate change risk assessment or even resilience. I mean, 75% of the earth is water, and out of that 90%, I would say, is below the surface. So without the UDA, how are we going to drive climate change? I mean, how do we study climate change is also something. I mean, the entire modeling and simulation has to originate from the underwater domain awareness. So there is a huge opportunity there. But there is a huge challenge of suboptimal sonar performance. I mean, the sonar performance degrades by almost 60%. compared to the temperate waters where they were designed. So there's a huge challenge which need to be kept in mind, and they have to be prioritized. The second is opportunity. I mean, whether it is Sagar, Mala, again, here the navigability is a huge challenge. But we are constantly looking towards dredging as a de facto solution, not looking at sediment transport study. So underwater domain awareness becomes a very important aspect here. Inland water transport, again, I mean, if you talk about the national waterway number 1 and 2, Ganga and the Brahmaputra, the siltation is a huge challenge, I mean, because of the tropical condition. So how to keep these waters navigable throughout the year is a big challenge. So again, here the sediment transport study will become important, and excessive dredging will only make these projects unviable. Deep ocean mission, I mean, International Seabed Authority is also facing a huge challenge in terms of, giving the exploitation permission. I think there is a lot more work to be done in terms of underwater domain awareness and the capability for sustainable exploitation. Fisheries and aquaculture, again, here we see fisheries and aquaculture has become unsustainable because of wrong practices. So again, how to navigate this in a sustainable manner, a lot of underwater domain awareness will be required. My colleague will present, I mean, some of the papers are dedicated to each one of them that I'm talking about. Strategic security, of course, is a very big concern, and huge amount of, I mean, after the 2611, MDA maritime domain awareness got a lot of importance, but I think underwater domain awareness needs far more prioritizing. Gati Shakti is an important initiative where the effort is to coordinate among the various stakeholders. So underwater domain awareness should also become an integral part of the Gati Shakti initiative, so that then information can be shared and much more coherence can be brought into the whole effort. And of course, in the freshwater system, again, because of high siltation, our water bodies have become very, very, they have depleted the storage capability. So that's a huge problem, how to make them more sustainable, and even it impinges on the dam security. So this is the framework that we talk about, the underwater domain awareness framework. If you look at the 4 sides of the cube, it represents the 4 stakeholders that we talked about. But the core will be the acoustic capacity and capability building. Unless we are able to generate enough information below what is happening below the water, we will not be able to drive it. And if you look at the vertical construct, a lot of sensing, analysis, and regulation is required. So each of those smaller cubes will define those specific applications and the specific areas that need to be focused. And even from a demographic aspect also, our young professionals and students can pick up projects which will make them far more employable. And it will define, even for the government also, it will allow them to channelize the resources and the funding in a more nuanced way. And this we have divided into various specific problems like underwater radiated noise. It's important for the Navy in terms of acoustic stealth, but it's also important for the conservation, ecological conservation activists, also acoustic habitat degradation. The same technology or the capability can be used by various stakeholders like ship designers and ship builders also can use this capability. And similarly, sediment management. Again, whether it is water resource management, inland water transport, even for deploying assets in the water bodies, I mean, whether it is for defense or even other applications. So this is the digital transformation. I mean, I think the only way forward is digital transformation. So you can see a map which we have built using modeling and simulation in the Indian Ocean region for underwater noise. So this kind of heat map, I mean, spatiotemporal mapping will help the policymakers to drive this in a very, very nuanced manner. So modeling and simulation, I mean, in the conventional way, people will say that we need to deploy sensors but how many sensors can we deploy in our EZ is something. So modeling and simulation is the only way forward, and my colleague will be discussing this. So to see, to understand, and to share is what we talk about in terms of acoustic capacity building. So to see is this hardware, the sensor, and the platform which will carry the sensor. To understand is the data analytics that will be required. And here the customization will be possible. And to share is the is real-time sharing of the information in a user-friendly format for the user. And in terms of human resource, high-end data analysts, domain knowledge specialists who will interpret the data and then the field deployment. The field deployment specialist is where the coastal and the riverine communities can be involved. And it will be such a beautiful thing to have these people part of the digital transformation. So outreach, engage, sustain is the way forward, according to me. I mean, we need to do a massive sensitization. A lot of people don't even understand the nuances. And once they understand, then more customized engagement, and then how to sustain it through policy and technology intervention. And I would say, I mean, in terms of center of excellence, I mean, the 5 pillars, I mean, research, innovation, skilling, and knowledge, and also policy. These all 5 pillars need to be driven together. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Nishtha. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your insightful presentation. With this, I think we'll move on to the next speaker of the day. We have with us Professor P.V. Rao, who is a maritime studies expert, an expert in maritime studies. A little bit about his areas of research. He has like the interest of his research lies in topics such as regional trade system, SARC, maritime studies, South and Southeast Asian political and economic relations. Professor Rao has also been the founder editor of the Indian Ocean Survey, a biannual international journal, now being published by the Routledge, UK. He published over 40 research articles in the Indian and foreign journals. He was the director of Center of Indian Ocean Studies, Usmania University, and a member of UGC Committee on Area Studies. So he regularly lectures at colleges of air warfare, College of Naval Warfare, and several other academic institutions. Over to you, Professor P.V. Rao.
Good afternoon, all my colleagues on the board at the other end. Now, I just want to initially make a couple of statements. One is purely personal. I'm no sailor serving or superannuated. Nor am I an oceanographer or ocean scientist. I'm just a retired academic. The only reason and my credentials to be on board this webinar is that I have been consistently showing my academic interest in maritime affairs with special reference to India. That's the main reason. So please don't take seriously what I say about UD, about which I don't know anything. In fact, I learned only out of this concept of late from Dr. Das. Secondly, there's something today a more generalized statement, but I mean very seriously. Friends, for a country of our size, more so now when we are talking about Mahasagar, there are no enough research centers focused on maritime affairs. When I say, I mean it. In the university system of India, as of now, there is only one Center for Maritime Studies in Pondicherry University, which is very active. The center which I was heading, and one or two more centers on India's maritime studies, unfortunately, have been closed down by the University Grants Commission. There are in the public domain supported by Government of India, partially or fully, like IDSA or National Maritime Foundation, etc. About them, I do not want to comment too much. They are doing human service. But I'm rather surprised, pleasantly delighted to share with all of you, outside the academic domain, outside the public establishment, I come across the Center for Maritime Research focusing on UDA by two pioneering people, senior colleague Dr. Praful Tarera, am I right, sir? And Dr. Arnab Das. I mean, these people are really giving a very good shape. I wish the best for the center and proud to be associated. Thank Dr. Das for having taken me into confidence into the activities of your own center. When I say it, I mean them. Now, having said this one, let me come to. I have been advised, Dr. Das, that why not I speak something about how underwater domain awareness can be contextualized what we are talking about maritime power. Dr. Das had a reason to suggest this to me. I just finished my book, supported by the Indian Council of World Affairs, India's Maritime Power. Maybe, hopefully, by the end of this year, the book should come out. But that apart, let me say, I have taken the view that in our country, reasonably good degree of research, debates are going on about India's naval power. Quite often than not, naval power is interchangeably used with maritime power. I am not disputing that one. It's quite common. But maritime power, if somebody takes a little bit of a more interest, is there is a subtle difference? No, rather substantial difference between these two concepts, naval power and maritime power. Maritime power has been of late in this country is being popularized only of late. And in that one, naval power is one of the components. I have read, I have spoken to some of my naval colleagues. They do admit, when you say India's maritime power, the Navy, of course, is an important factor. But there are other components to the India's maritime power, which more than me, as a professional, now as a researcher, as an organizer of this center, Dr. Das explained in very lucidly in the beginning, in the introductory. I would rather say this one. What is it that doesn't go into maritime power? Is it concerned only the factoring sea and the resources into the national perspective? I would rather say, as a student of Indian development, etc., maritime power is an important dimension of India's national power. Maritime power by Indian scholars, more senior, more learned than me say, it includes shipping, port construction, fishing modernization, so on and so forth. Of course, the merchant navy, very important one, and conducting ocean research, development of ocean technologies, so on and so forth. Let's now say to what extent the government of India has introduced, if at all, any important policy initiatives which can complement India's maritime power. I am of the opinion, friends, either in the public domain in terms of research or at the government level, the concept of maritime power of India is gaining encouragement, momentum only in the last a decade and a half. This is my submission. And if we see from the government point of view, yes, some important, rather very important policy initiatives have been introduced, which will definitely go into the different components of what we call maritime power. As Dr. Das had been mentioning, Sagar, India's first ever National Maritime Summit held at Mumbai, which emphasized constructing more and more shipyards. In the more recently introduced Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, Then also giving more encouragement and bringing private sector into national shipbuilding enterprises. Then more importantly now, what is called the National Deep Ocean Mission. Excuse me. National Deep Ocean Mission, in fact, touches upon more solid, deeper aspects of complementing the sea, its vast resources, etc., to national development, with particular regard to the maritime development. Of late, I hear, somebody can correct me, maritime development also is a factor that is incorporated into what we call the Maritime Vision of India 2030. In fact, I read and I wrote quite a bit about India's maritime vision in my forthcoming book. The Maritime Vision 2030 clearly says, among its objectives, quote, enhancing India's global stature as a maritime power, unquote, is one of the stated objectives of 2030 Maritime Vision of India published by Government of India, Ministry of Shipping, Ports and Inland Waterways. Later on, I am sure many informed scholars the other end would know that Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 1947, more recent one. This lays down the charter of developing India's maritime resources, etc., living, non-living, and how the vast marine resources of the country can be factored into the national development. The 1947 Maritime Amrit Kal Vision is a more enlarged vision, charter, sketch of the 2030 maritime. So friends, I may at the cost of repetition, I may say, Sagar Mala, the two maritime visions, 2030, 2047, then the maritime summits, emphasizing on shipbuilding, deep post mission, etc. These are most important policy initiatives which have been of late introduced by Government of India. Now, one thing I want to say, deep ocean mission, being a non-ocean science student, I really could not understand. I spoke to some of my friends and I did a little bit of reading. Deep ocean mission really emphasizes substantially deepening India's public interest to galvanize, to leverage the ocean floor, underwater ocean floor resources, such as minerals, etc., for the national development. I understand already under this mission called DOM, operation vehicle called Samudrayam, and its supplementary Matcha 6000 have been launched. I checked carefully myself. The minister concerned for this Ministry of Ports and Shipping made a statement that Samudrayan and Matcha have already been launched and they are doing reasonably good work. These are what I mean to say, policy statements, operational vehicles, which have been put into action, but more recently by the Indian government. This is something some of us who are more interested in the maritime affairs of India should really compliment, should be happy about it. That my country, our country, though belatedly has been evincing important interest in order to harvest, factor the ocean around us into the overall national growth, maritime power of this country. Having said this, quickly I may go to the second part of my presentation. I may raise issue, but I do not have answers, frankly speaking. Do we have the requisite instrumentation or technologies in order to see that these very ambitious and also very expensive programs like Deep Ocean Mission to execute them? My humble question here is, this is rather my inquiry with the distinguished colleagues who I learned across this webinar. I'm only raising it. How far, to what extent India is reasonably equipped with the technologies and instruments that go deep into the ocean, which Dr. Das is calling underwater domain awareness, domain research. Whatever the little information that I've gathered is, we have made some initial attempts. However, by way of adding a rider, but not criticizing, we have to go quite a long way to acquire the requisite deep water or underwater technologies. Let me only remind my very informed scholars, sailors, etc., long ago, way back in 1969 at Visakhapatnam Eastern Naval Command, a National Science and Technological Laboratory was established. Its purpose was to help underwater combat missions with particular reference to the submarines, their acoustics, combat capabilities, etc. Mind you, 1969. Later we have got the NIOT INCOIS in my city, Hyderabad. Sir, please remind me when the time is up, Dr. Das. Is my time up,
1 minute, please, sir.
sir?
1 minute, sir. 1 minute, please.
Yes, sir. 1 minute, I'll complete. NIOT, then what I'm saying, INCOIS, of course, NIO. Some of these national institutions in their role have contributed to underwater domain awareness and repeat technologies. However, informed people say that we do not still as yet have UDA technologies to meet some of the policy initiatives like deep water or DOM missions, etc. I'm rather surprised, and with this I shall complete. Whatever the technologies we are acquiring, particularly from America, is essentially meant for Sagar, but within Sagar, only to a security component of the Sagar. Mind you, Sagar has two important components, security and growth. But we need to apply UDA technology for growth purposes, but informed people say, A, we don't have enough technologies for growth to build maritime power. Secondly, we have to acquire them friendly nations. I believe we are acquiring from America already. Lastly, my friends, with a concluding note I may submit, I am rather surprised. Sailing naval officers recently published a book. Its title is Indian Navy's Vision 2047. About 15 to 20 serving naval officers have contributed, in which I'm rather surprised. Very frankly, some of the middle level senior naval officers including a rear admiral, admitted we do not have technologies sufficient enough to achieve the ambitious maritime power initiative that have been launched. We have to acquire them. Thank you all, my colleagues, having patiently borne with non-sailor, non-oceanographic talker. In particular, once again, I profusely thank and congratulate Dr. Arnab Das for having given me this opportunity to be present with you on this webinar platform. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor P.V. Rao. It was a pleasure having you with us and to listen to your kind remarks. Thanks again. I think we'll move on to the next speaker of the day. We have with us Captain Sarabjit Parmar. Captain Sarabjit Parmar is presently a distinguished fellow at the Council of Strategic and Defense Research in New Delhi. He also has his associations with the United Service Institution of India in New Delhi. And today's topic of his presentation is strategic security challenges in the Indian Ocean region. So I'll hand over the mic directly to Captain Parmar for his kind remarks.
Thank you so much, Nishtha, and MRC. Thanks once again for engaging in an important topic, which at times does get left behind due to, let's say, the present security environment. And let me start from that aspect that there is a need to relook our security environment, especially in the IOR. Trump 2.0 is creating ripple effects across the world. Europe has had a relook. And although there is nothing directly that impacts the Indo-Pacific or the Quad or the IOR for that matter, but we should be ready for sort of taking on the onus of security in the IOR. And that is, so let me start with the fact that since we are talking about Sagar and what Professor Rao mentioned, the elements of security and growth, and if we focus on three pillars of enhancing stability, ensuring security, and preserving peace, we wouldn't be too off. And these three pillars are strong, then we can sort of maintain a sort of a strategic security umbrella in the IOR. And I will restrict to the IOR. The Indo-Pacific gets a little too big right now. Right. And it can be argued that whatever multilateralism used to take place or cooperation that takes place between nations is under the security blanket provided by the presence of the US, its alliances, its strategic relationships, and also the strategic relationships between other nations that operate under this sort of a security blanket. So that provides the strength. Now, if the US is going to sort of weaken the threads of that security blanket, then obviously we need to revise the way we look at maritime security especially, and that is the main meat of today's discussion. So therefore, it is time that middle powers of the Indian Ocean region and all those other nations who have a stake in the IOR get together and work at a semblance of a security blanket. And if you do remember, in the last couple of days, we are engaging African nations. We have the Africa-India key maritime engagement, which is ongoing. We also have iOS Sagar, which is ongoing. So these are all endeavors under the umbrella of Sagar, which also includes our neighborhood first policy, our Act East, Look West, Indian Ocean Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, to name one or two. Therefore, we need to relook all this when we look at the security challenges. And it's a common fact that instability on land will always create instability on the seas. And this is generally on the maritime area, which is adjacent to the unstable land area. But today we have a unique situation where the Red Sea is unstable because of instability at Gaza. So this is an example where two areas which are separated by distance can have a connect due to instability. And we all know the impact of instability in the Red Sea. And instability in any case encourages non-traditional threats to come out. And there's a whole list of them which we've been looking at. And the instability in the Red Sea is a reminder that the first hit is maritime trade. And therefore your growth, which is part of the G, which is part of Sagar, gets impacted. And then the costs go up, there is rerouting issues, that encourages the opening doors for piracy, and therefore there is a need to work together even closer and much more closer. So the question here is that how do we look at it? And do remember that whenever you have a gap, there will be some nation who will be willing to step in. To give you an example, the cutting down of USAID, especially in Africa, has opened the doors for so China to come in and sort of offer a replacement to the USAID, and therefore that is something that we may not like, especially India. There's an example. I mean, China is omnipresent in the Indian Ocean region in various areas. I'll just cover one or two examples a little later when we look at the underwater domain. But another nation that we need to look at very cautiously is Turkey. So Turkey is established in Somalia in a big way. It's got a base. It's looking after their maritime security. It's training its navy. This is something that actually we could have done. But we have Turkey established in Somalia. So the question here is that the more Turkey stays in Somalia, it has more access to the Indian Ocean region. And more recently, it asked for a missile testing area in the Indian Ocean region, because obviously the maritime area it has in its own proximity is too less. So these are certain examples of instability can be created by either gaps being filled up by other nations or due to a loss of interest of a certain power in that region. And therefore, this has resulted in a relook at the rules-based international order. And I go back to the middle pass coming together, which is something we could do. And I think when we look at the nations who are participating in the Africa-India key maritime engagement, we see Sri Lanka is also a part of it. And so therefore, I would say that we need to work together. India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, these are some names that come off the top of my head in the Indian Ocean region. France, which is a prominent player in the Indian Ocean region. So we need to have a relook at how is the security blanket and how is the security engagements going to continue if there is a weakening of that security blanket. And therefore, while there is a rules-based international order, there's a parallel narrative of a deals-based order. So we need to balance the two very, very carefully. So let me come to how this change in the security environment and the incoming challenges, some have been discussed, and I will look at three of them in the underwater domain. So let's look at what the term gaining prominence is: seabed lines of communication, which are essentially submarine cables, oil and gas pipelines, and anything that flows on the seabed. We don't know what future technology will tell us. And so therefore, there have been instances of cables being cut. There is sensitivity where submarine cables are considered, mainly due to sovereignty issues and the sensitivity in territorial seas of nations. But there is a counter to this argument that if it is so easy to cut cables, why have non-state actors not done it before? It's obviously they also thrive on the information or the financial transactions that run through submarine cables. But if you are to impact a country, then you just need to cut one or two cables. And if you remember recently, China came out with a statement that they have equipment that is essentially dual use. One is for seabed mining, which is the second point I'm going to discuss. And the same equipment can be used to cut cables. Perhaps that's an indication for things to come. So therefore, we need to be more alert under the underwater domain, specifically where our own national interest and the regional interest as far as under the umbrella of Sagar is concerned. Back to a little bit on seabed mining. Now, this is an issue that's going to get more and more prickly, especially with the High Seas Treaty about to come into force on the BBNJ. I think the last list I had just noted was that there are 112 signatories or 21 ratifications. It needs 60. Surprisingly, this is one a treaty that India didn't sign on the first day. We've done it with UNCLOS and the other two bouquet, which is the bouquet conventions. That is the Part 11 and the fish shipping agreement, but we are yet to ratify it. But do remember, we did ratify UNCLOS after 14 years, but there is similarity between the BBNJ High Seas Treaty and our Biodiversity Act of 2002. Similar case was our MZI Act of 1976, which predated UNCLOS, catered for a lot of UNCLOS issues which were under discussion at that point in time. So we're on a little bit of a safe ground here. But the problem comes of the International Seabed Authority, and there are questions being raised as to would the private industry be permitted to take part in deep sea mining, and there's a huge narrative going on. And there is also an ongoing issue that they haven't come out with the what is called the exploitation regulations to facilitate a rule-based mining order, which would give a sort of a balance to all nations, whether developing or developed, to, make use of the seabed minerals are there. There is much opposition still existing to it. There are some 32 countries either calling for a precautionary pause or a moratorium or a complete ban owing to the negative environmental footprint of deep sea mining. And there has been a multi-year deadlock at the ISA, which is already listed to a deadline. So we need to re-examine these issues, especially if you're going to look at blue economy, which again is another term that needs to be discussed. And where a definition is difficult, it's best to look at that term as a concept. So therefore, India needs to take the lead, especially through IORA, where you have a blue economy discussion already going on. In fact, next month, I'm going to the island of Reunion, where I'll be speaking on blue economy and how IORA under India's leadership can be pushing it. Hopefully, there will be some solutions and there'll be some discussion on that. But again, this is the underwater domain. So the coming challenges are going to be addressing submarine cables, seabed mining, because if we don't do it, there's some other nation who's going to go in. And do remember, Maldives recently permitted China to do underwater surveillance and survey in its maritime zones. This is totally as per UNCLOS, so there is Maldives is free to do what it chooses to do, but it also gives China the opportunity to be legally present in the sea areas of the IOR and surrounding India, and therefore we need to be a little more cautious. Insofar as seabed mining and submarine cables are concerned, again, there is a high-tech requirement. There are specialist ships, there is equipment required. The cost is tremendous. Who are the countries who have this sort of technology? And maybe Arnab may have can add on to this a little later, one of his team, that if we are looking at underwater domain awareness, who are the nations who have the total technology? Maybe offhand, I could say USA, France, Russia, China. If that be the case, then of course they rule the roost, and therefore we need to engage them. No nation is going to give you technology for free or give you access to total technology. So therefore, we need to look inward. We need to develop these areas, and that is something we need to do. The third, more importantly, is of course underwater domain maritime or awareness, which is a part of the MDA part of it. But then again, sensitivities would come in about, and how many nations would agree to have a UDA, would agree to have sensors put in their maritime zones. Nations loath to inform or don't want other nations to know the movement of the submarines, and today you have UUV. So this is a very prickly path we need to tread. So one is technology, the second is money, developing in-house capacities and capabilities, and whom to engage in case you actually want to have a proper underwater domain awareness. And this is something that needs to be discussed. And if we are looking at a new sort of a rules-based international order, and Ambassador Rakesh Sood, in a discussion sometime back, said that we are presently a multipolar world without multilateralism. The fallback, to my mind, is minilateralism. So we have the Colombo Security Conclave that is doing good work. So perhaps we need to form certain more minilaterals with like-minded nations, look at a particular issue, put it behind us and go on to the next. And therefore, we need to have this sort of a conglomerate, maybe operating under the banner of IORA and BIMSTEC, or call it what, or whichever multilateral organization, but picking out nations and working together. I'm a big fan of minilaterals, so I think trilats is the solution. And we need to look at various nations, and these are the some sort of solutions that I can there. And do remember, bigger nations who can withstand pressures will always operate outside the existing legal regimes, whereas middle powers generally tend to follow the legal regime because it's good for their status and it is a solution that they would like to arrive at. And therefore, we are looking at a particular world. I wouldn't even call it a bipolar world, but I'd rather stick to a multipolar world without multilateralism. And so therefore, if we are going to be sort of questioning the motives of bigger nations, then as middle powers, I think we need to act together. And I'll pause here. I'll take on questions later on, I think, if I have generated interest in whatever I've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Parmar, for your kind remarks. And letting us all know about the security challenges that persist in the Indian Ocean region. So now that we have like two experts who have spoken during our webinar, we'll move on to the next presentations. And from now on, we'll have a couple of presentations made by our internal team members. Starting with, I would like to call upon Catherine J, who heads the publication and research team at the Maritime Research Center. And Catherine is going to be making a presentation on building a sustainable blue economy. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Nisha. Good afternoon, one and all. I'll be talking about Sagar and its implication for India's blue economy. So, as the previous speakers have already given a very comprehensive overview of what Sagar is and why blue economy is required, as Sarajit sir also clearly pointed out. I'm going to just elaborate on few aspects of what are the gaps that we need to fill in to actually become, efficient in making sure that our blue economy is utilized properly to its full potential. So why the ocean matters more than ever? So I'll firstly take you through a couple of news articles, recent ones, talking about the implications, ocean's implications to environment and even for the geopolitical interests. So here we talk about how humanity depends on ocean, and the science and policy nexus is very critical at this juncture. So chemical, physical, geological, and biological states, the information, the data. So all of that is required to actually understand what's happening in the ocean. And then we have this particular piece of information where Western Pacific nations, and similar as Sarabjit sir mentioned, a lot of multipolar gatherings and also minilateral gatherings and trilateral gatherings are happening. And such example is this Western Pacific nations coming together. So this is a huge group of nations coming together to bridge the gap between science and policy and advance the restoration of the ocean health. So this is basically ocean health-based phenomenon. And then we have overfishing. So overfishing plus how the difference between the developed and the developing nations, the difference in the tariffs they impose on the fish products. So it's highly different. The tariff is very low, about 3.2% in high income countries, but around 14% among the developing countries. So this huge difference plays a very critical role in how we take our blue economy forward. And then we have the US factor. The US factor at present, the tariff imposition, etc., has led to a lot of commentaries saying how this could lead to the reshaping and boosting of the untapped potential in the regional and commercial links, such as the Indian Ocean region itself. And this could effectively lead to shifting in the policy, supply chains and the reassessment of global alliances. So this is going to be leading to geopolitical as well as ecology. So how can India at this juncture turn this tide into an opportunity for itself and for the global south? So that is the looming question. And another point here is the China factor. How China's increase in trade with the global south is it's very high. It's really high as compared to the other nations in this region. So China is leading the whole blue economy sector in the Indian Ocean region. So that is kind of like a fact. And with the US tariffs set, trade lanes are already shifting, and China is actually benefiting from, as previously mentioned, China is set to benefit from all of these factors that US is putting forth. So blue economy is now a new frontier where for economic, and among all of this, blue economy is actually a tussle between the economic resilience and the sustainability of different nations in the region. Now, coming back to how we are placing Sagar in this particular scenario. Sagar 2015 had three major pillars and still has the same three major pillars: security, economy, and ecology. And this has given the stage for India's ocean diplomacy in trade, strategy, and environment. And till now, from the review that I could do, India has been involved in exclusive economic zone surveillance, search and rescue, first responder initiatives, oil spill disaster management, and also trying to maintain adherence to international with its regional partners, such as Maldives, Mauritius, Indonesia, Japan, etc. So these are the major sectors that by far Sagar, under the umbrella of Sagar, it has happened. Plus, a lot of different policies have also been implemented. But Sagar, as such, under the umbrella of Sagar, like the direct direction of Sagar, these strategic placements have taken place. So, how does Mahasagar come into the picture, and how can Mahasagar contribute? So, from the basic first-hand information that we've gotten, mutual and holistic advancement. So, there have been certain additions. So, now the term Global South has been highlighted. Uh, so, talking about how India's leadership of the Global South is going to be of paramount importance in this next phase of Sagar. Trade, capacity building, and technology sharing have been highlighted. So now we have to wait and see how this vision unfolds. So blue economy, as all of you must know, um, it's a sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth. It's inclusive. It uses, it promotes renewable energy. It is based on sustainable fisheries. Employment generation is a huge aspect of blue economy. And various sectors, fisheries, tourism, are all part of blue economy. And a lot of emerging sectors such as seabed mining, marine biotechnology, are all picking speed in the economy in all the part of the world. Nobody is like lagging behind, or everybody has taken certain steps to actually take it forward. And now, in this context, if you look at it, look at blue economy through the ESG and SDG lenses. Ocean health is equal to national prosperity. What you mean is that sustainability in blue economy is inherent. It has to be an inherent factor to make sure that we achieve the national and also the regional prosperity that we are looking forward to. So so India's Blue Economy Draft Policy 2020 lists out a set of recommendations, a vision of how we want to take it forward. For example, the National Accounting Framework, the importance for marine spatial planning, marine fisheries, manufacturing, trade, technology, skill development, deep sea mining, security, collaboration. So all of these are have been recommended in the policy. And the blue economy policy has, if you see the alignment, so the larger ecosystem has various other policies: Sagar, Sagarmala, Deep Ocean Mission, India in Pacific Oceans Initiative, Act East policy, oceanography from space, launching of the data boys, New India by 2020, Amrit Kal Vision 2047, Project Mosam for the heritage perspectives between the countries, and India as a net security provider. So all of this provides in enabling ecosystem, of course. But a vision is only as good as the foundation it stands on. So what kind of foundation? So what are we missing? So there's a lot of underreporting of the informal sectors. There is no proper valuation of the marine ecosystem services. There's a lack of ESG tracking and robust marine spatial planning. And there's also a lack of scenario thinking. And I would also like to point out here about this RIS study, which showed that India's blue trade, which is export plus import, is about 15 to 22%. And this still, and our GDP from blue economy is about 5%. And this particular sector, the blue trade, has been highly resilient even in face of the pandemic. And that is highly commendable. And that makes blue economy sector highly resilient. And there is, but because we do not have the proper documentation, data gathering, and data transparency, we are not sure of how good of an estimate this is. Plus, there could be a gross underestimation, and I mean that could be some of the doubts that arise. And to fix these, we need more than just infrastructure. With just data, as Arnab sir mentioned previously, there's a lot of data, and we are moving on to the second stage where we need So I'll wrap up, Nishtha, in a minute. So we need the infrastructure, we need the insight as well. So insight should be based on the tropical solution for tropical partners. So Mahasagar could be the solution. So as I said, we have to wait and see how it unfolds. So Mahasagar could be India's response to the shifting world. And these are the different components of what we look for in the tropical solutions: skilling, knowledge generation, indigenous technology, etc. And thinking and flexible action plans. So where this UDA gets placed here, it's a strategic enabler. So to take the whole blue economy from the vision, the policy to precision. So real-time underwater sensing, modeling, acoustic capacity and capability, and generation, the knowledge generation, etc., will fall under the umbrella of underwater domain awareness. And the benefits you'll gather from this particular approach is marine spatial planning, or robust marine spatial planning, risk reduction because you have done the analysis, you have the insight, and resource optimization without wasting the resources. As Ambassador Anup Mughal repeatedly mentions about how resource optimization is a very important factor in the economy. And so UDA makes Mahasagar measurable, dynamic, and future ready. And Mahasagar Power the UDA becomes not just an idea, but a strategy. And India's growing maritime link. So I'll just skip this. So India's growing maritime with all these BIMSTEC, IORA, ASEAN, IOC, all these regional forums. How can they connect? Innovation partnerships, technology localization, skilling and capacity, trade facilitation, blue investments. But none of this work will unless we build from the bottom up. And India's leadership for the global south will depend on Mahasagar plus UDA, which could become the blueprint for collective maritime resilience. So let's co-create the ocean economy of the future with equity, insight, and shared purpose. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you. Nishtha,
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Thank you for the elaborate presentation and for explaining to us how UDA and the sustainable blue economy can be merged, and it can together benefit the Sagar vision, which is already been in the domain for 10 years now. So thanks, Catherine, once again. A quick reminder for the next presenters that we have, that please try and stick to the time limit of 10 minutes, because we do have a lot of other people who are waiting for their chance to come. So next, I'd like to call upon Sridhar Prabhuraman, who is the Deputy Director of the Maritime Research Center. Sridhar is going to be making a presentation on marine spatial planning for effective governance. Over to you, Sridhar.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Nishtha. Set myself timer for 10 minutes so that I don't have to go to Nishtha's warning. So in today's presentation, I'll be presenting to you all the topic of why and how modeling and simulation-based marine spatial planning is extremely important for India for a sustainable governance. Now, this concept as such devised is coming from an existing framework of marine spatial planning that has been existing since 1980s. So to quickly just summarize what marine spatial planning essentially is, it's an approach to manage our existing area so that multiple activities such as fishing, shipping, tourism, all the different activities that happen in a shared region can happen without clashing with each other or harming any kind of marine environment in the region. Now, as I said, marine spatial planning is not a new concept. This has been devised straight from 1980s. I believe the pilot implementation happened in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park that's in Australia. The way it works is that because the area is extremely huge, but they also wanted to conserve the habitat, they demarcated the areas into 3 different zones. The first one being a general use zone for tourism and fishing, the other one being habitat protection zones where limited human activities can take place, such as diving, fishing, recreational activities, and so on. And then there are also no-take zones where human activities are completely banned to preserve the coral reefs, to preserve the marine biodiversity in the region. Now, it is important to note that the process of performing this essentially involves using static maps, identifying what are the different zones using some static data, and then demarcating them, and then obviously consulting with the stakeholders, the local community and the fishermen before going ahead and charting. Now, marine spatial planning, as such, is something that IMO and other agencies are trying to making a mandate of for different countries, and this completely and this totally supports our Sagar vision and the SDG 14 goals for economic growth, ecosystem health, and marine security. Now, although MSP has been mandated, it's not something mandated in the sense it's something that is recommended as a approach. It's not every country has been able to implement MSP to a complete as a complete framework. As you can see, India from the map, as you can see, India is still not having any kind of an official MSP. Sure, at this point of stage, the Puducherry, along with the India in collaboration with Norway as part of the Indo-Norway Integration and Ocean Initiative, have initiated steps towards implementing MSP, and the NCCR is currently working on a pilot project in Puducherry for the same. However, in this presentation, we are trying to establish how the traditional MSP frameworks that exist across the country and especially for India is not something that is efficient or it will work in the upcoming future, in the near future. Now, why this is important, I'll skip over this. I think we have spoken enough about why things are important for India. But with a vast coastline and a vast zone that we have, it is important that we make use of that. And as Arnab sir has also mentioned, that the need for indigenous capabilities is right now that we need to look at. Now, moving forward, what we saw that happened in Great Barrier Reef in 1980s, today we have come a long way now. We have a lot of decision support interfaces, as we call them, for marine spatial planning. Interfaces that showcases different areas, in a given area, what are the different kind of exclusive economic zones, what are the fishing routes, what are the marine infrastructure present in the region. And there are multiple tools that have been developed, a digital ocean platform for India, WIO Symphony for Nairobi, and so on. But all of these tools currently use static data. They use static maps to identify these things. That means that any kind of change that happens, any kind of climate change or any of those kind of impacts, those impacts are not recorded in the existing marine spatial planning tools. And now quoting, this is not something that I am saying or as an organization we are saying, quoting World Bank report from 2020, they have added the fact that in India currently there is a very fragmented and reactive approach. Multiple agencies are operating in silos with unshared data sets, leading to an uncoordinated decision. And this disjointed approach is what results in this information gap and the missed early warnings. Many of the states are still struggling to even formulate an integrated marine plan due to the limited data sharing and technical capacity that we have. So there are three aspects. There are three institutional and policy gaps that are adding to this issue of fragmentation. First is the fragmented governance. We have multiple ministries. We have Ministry of Earth Science. We have Ministry of Environment, Forest Conservation, and climate change, and so on, that manage different marine sectors with extremely poor coordination between them. So there is no central MSP authority which is leading an initiative for marine spatial planning. The second thing is lack of integration. We do not have any of the sectoral projects that we have, like ports or fisheries. All of them proceed in silos, and I'll explain a few examples as we move forward. And because they proceed in silos, there is no central agencies. There's no central agencies that mandate or look at all of these aspects. And there's also weak policy framework. None of the environmental impact assessment report that we have today looks at the cumulative impact of any kind of project on the future. It essentially only considers only the site-specific impact, and that too at a limited for a limited duration of time. So the root cause is very clear. There is no mandate. The data sharing is limited, and there's no unified decision support interface that allows for marine spatial planning. Now, to bolster upon this thought, there are two examples I would like to present, and why the comment made by the World Bank is extremely important. The first one is the coastal erosion and ecological impact. In Tamil Nadu, hard structures were constructed, such as for the sea, what we call as seawalls or grounds were constructed to prevent local erosion. But without modeling the sediment flow, what essentially happened is that fix ignored any kind of sediment dynamics and so on. And essentially because of the wave patterns are going to change, because the sediment flow is going to change, this just shifted the problem and worsened it into a nearby station rather than fixing the problem altogether. And so what we saw was the worsened erosion in nearby areas and unforeseen ecological impact. Now, had there been a modeling and simulation based spatial planning where we had assessed the cumulative impact while performing the project, this is something that could have been prevented. Another example is for stakeholder conflicts. A massive port was constructed off the coast of Kerala, which ended up completely destroying the ecosystem, completely destroying the location for the fishermen's habitat. And that what that ended up happening is many of the fishermen, roughly 56,000, ended up protesting and stopping a $900 million project. Now, this is something extremely, again, important to understand, that because the port construction only considered the infrastructure aspect of things. It did not consider how construction of port will essentially lead to marine habitat degradation. What is the cumulative impact on the other such community? That missing that angle is what causes such kind of issues to begin with. And then again, reiterating the root cause that I mentioned before, it's not that the stakeholders do not want to do it. It's just that there is no decision support interface that allows them to easily do that thing. And there's no mandate that requests them to perform a cumulative impact assessment while on an ongoing project or while performing a particular project. So what is then modeling and simulation based MSP? What we essentially present here is a kind of an additional approach, a kind of additional aspects to so what we essentially want here is adding two different aspects of traditional MSP. What you can see in the orange zones are the traditional MSP, where we have real-time or historical data streams that we have that gets embedded into a decision support interface and then the stakeholder consultation and so on. What it misses is currently the simulation engine and impact analysis. There is no simulation. The modeling and simulation based MSP essentially tells that we need to model different scenarios using the current data, using the live data, and identify what are the future cases or what are the future problems that might occur with the existing ongoing project. And that is then used for multiple scenarios testing. And therefore, this MSP that we are producing is one, dynamic in nature, because it will continuously adapt to the changing marine conditions, and the second, that there is a significant impact modeling that is inculcated. So every single time a project happens, we essentially look at how it will affect the ecosystem. We take feedback from the community and then we feed it back to the system, and hence looking at multiple what if scenarios. If a particular project happens, and what is the impact of it on the coastal habitat in the 10, 20 or 50 years coming forward, and therefore enabling a more of a proactive approach than a reactive approach, as signaled in the report. One example now to many what we actually mean by modeling and simulation. This is one of the good examples of what we can represent, where we are representing the noise that is emitted from the ship. We are modeling and we are simulating what is the overall amount of noise that is coming live in the current day and time for a given region. By not just the shipping, so a traditional MSP will only show the shipping traffic. We go beyond that and identify what is the impact of that shipping traffic. And that's what we are trying to recommend here, that the MSP that India needs to follow is modeling and simulation based MSP. Now, in the interest of time, I'll try to rush through a bit of these. The applications in IO are huge. I think we all know that shipping noise modeling is something extremely important. Shipping noise modeling is something that is extremely important. And this is not something that I'm saying just because we can do it. This has been done in the past off the coast of Sri Lanka. They saw that the blue whales were getting eradicated in a shipping lane. They just performed the modeling, and they just identified that just by shifting the shipping route by 15 nautical miles, they can preserve the blue whales, at the same time cause very less amount of disturbance to the shipping traffic as well. So such kind of simulation has shown a great amount of importance, has shown a great amount of advantage in the past, and it is something that, if inculcated in the Indian Ocean region, will also help. A few more examples, again, I'll avoid explaining through them, is habitat impact forecasting as well as climate vulnerability simulations, because both Indian Ocean region, again, is an extremely important habitat for coral reefs, and there are reports that says that it will be damaged, but more than 70% of coral reefs will be damaged by 2030. And the same goes for climate vulnerability as well. Because with increasing climate vulnerability, there is an extreme coral bleaching event that will happen in the near future. And therefore, what we say here is that for India, simulation-based MSP is not just a best practice, but it is actually a strategic necessity for 4 important reasons. One is extreme variability. We know that India's coast faces high variability in climate, biodiversity, and human activity, and therefore simulation-based MSP will offer a forecasting approach. Second is resource constraint. To be practically looking at it, India cannot afford a blanket deployment of expensive monitoring systems. And therefore, again, simulation-based MSP offers a cost-effective system where you deploy hydrophones not to monitor, but actually to validate. And the monitoring part is taken care by the simulation aspects. The third is a data fragmentation. Again, as explained earlier, we have multiple agencies that are using disparate data sets on their own. A simulation-based effort will mean that this simulation-based MSP will be feeding from the data collection system that we have, and that will integrate all the disparate data sets into one system where people can model different outcomes and behaviors. And of course, governance complexity. Because there are overlapping mandates, such kind of a data-driven digital data-driven model will offer that transparency and also replicability. If one agency can perform an operation in a particular project, that means that the same can be replicated by other agencies in different parts of the region. And it's extremely important, again, to reiterate what Arnab sir said, that the indigenous capabilities is again important, because even for modeling and simulation-based MSP, it needs to be tailored for Indian context. Community involvement is extremely important. So such kind of a tool will have to be translated into local languages and supported by local governments and stakeholders. So this is my last slide. Coming to recommendations in terms of what we saw so far. What we essentially need is, first we need there are three forms that I have divided them into: the legislative action, capacity building, and the technological investments that we need to make. In terms of legislative actions, we need to enact a national marine special planning bill. The reason for that is that we need a legal mandate, or we need to institutionalize MSP across multiple ministries and coastal states, so that everything is coordinated and there's no siloed implementation of marine special planning. The second thing is that MSP needs to be mandated as an extremely important aspect of environmental impact assessment, and that should also predict like long-term cumulative impacts rather than a short-term or short-sighted impact on the immediate region. It should also look at what is the impact on neighboring areas, what is the impact on other parts of the thing. And all of this will be possible if a simulation-based MSP approach is taken and a decision support tool has been implemented. The second thing is capacity building. The key idea being that it's the reason, one of the reason agreeably why MSP in general, let's not even talk about simulation-based MSP in general is difficult to mandate is because of the lack of capacity. We do not have skilled human resources. We do not have the institutional capacity, both in terms of infrastructure and resources, as well as in terms of knowledge, to implement such kind of broad marine special planning. So again, we need dedicated MSP cells and agencies such as NCCR and NCSM that can establish a national coastal and a marine special planning institute, which will train such kind of skilled humans. And we also need to set up an interministerial MSP committee, which can be led by central authorities such as Niti Aayog, because we need to ensure that any kind of policies that have been drafted by multiple state governments, there needs to be one nodal agency which can align all of those things. And also data sharing and making sure that things are not siloed is important, and that can be taken care by such kind of central authority. And lastly, technology investments are extremely important. While we try to prevent the cost in terms of the blanket deployment of expensive sonar, expensive hydrophones, or any other kind of monitoring systems, we do still need to invest in AI, high performance computers, because this is what actually will perform those kind of simulations and analysis. And while all the countries are doing a similar thing, it is time that India catches up with that kind of digital infrastructure for supporting this. And we need a digital twin of the Indian Ocean. This is something that NOAA, an American agency, has already performed, where it is trying to create a digital twin of the ocean, where it showcases exactly what a complete digital twin where all kind of modeling can take place, like where are the different where are the different marine habitats, what is the depth of each water, what kind of surface profiles, what is the sediment property of the region, and so on and so forth. All of this has been there are initiatives that are driven for that, and India too needs to take that approach and enhance the existing. I know that INCOIS already has a platform for a similar platform, but we need to again invest more in such kind of platforms and enhance the same, which can then further support simulation-based tools such as the one that NirDhwani Technologies is creating. With that, I finish my presentation. Thank you.
And I think with this, we'll straight away dive into the next presentation, which is going to be made by Romit Kaware, who's going to make a presentation on the topic sediment management and its strategic importance. So, Romit, you can take the floor.
Just sharing screen. Uh, yeah, so good evening, everyone. I am Romit, and I'll be discussing on the topic of the based on the sediment management viewpoint. So, basically, we all know that Sagar Mala was launched as like a port-led development. So, development of ports around like a string of pearls around the Indian coastline. Which led to the development of various new ports and new inland waterways as well. So basically, as we now are moving ahead with the 10 years of Sagar, we are looking into port-led industrialization. New ports have been coming up. We have the Vadwan port, Vinjinzam port is there. New ports are coming up. There is an development of new capacity at the existing ports. Recently, we have 106 new inland waterways have also they have also been identified. So we see that the port-led development or the water-led transport has gained a lot of momentum within these 10 years. But one aspect that is neglected, that is the sediment management. Now, why I am talking about sediment management is because it affects directly the navigability, the vessel movement, the navigability in the inland channels, the dredging, siltation. All of this is dependent on the sediment dynamics, the understanding of how the transport is happening, deposition is happening. Uh, but it is often overlooked and is ignored and is considered secondary. uh, but what we see is why we say that due to the rapid urbanization, say due to the unplanned expansion, encroachment on the flood plains, there is a stress on the drainage patterns, especially when we talk about the inland waterways or we have the river trajectories. Now, what this leads to is that in case of extreme events like floods or droughts, there is an these extreme events lead to an very uncontrolled sediment flow. Now, this directly has effects on the amount of water that is available in the navigation channel. The sedimentation reduces the depth as well. So this has a lot of effect in the navigability. Apart from that, the Indian Ocean region is one of the most least studied when we talk about the bathymetric conditions or the other acoustic related challenges as well. What is the benthic life or effect of the various anthropogenic activities on the marine ecosystem or on the suspended sediment flow? Basically, the Indian Ocean region lacks a lot in this particular the oceanographic research, and which is also like the Indian Ocean is also characterized by the tropical condition. We have unique conditions. So we have climatic conditions. The monsoon is an intense monsoonal system has been faced in the Indian Ocean region. All of this leads to various unique phenomena. The one of the thing is that the Indian Ocean region is again it is one of the it has the highest temperature of all of them. So it affects the basically apart from that there is the salinity and the density of the water. This has effects on the acoustic propagation. So the acoustics are very much important for the assessment of the seabed. Now these the acoustic waves are again dependent on the medium characteristics, that is the water basically in this condition. So the unique properties change the way how the propagation is happening. In fact, due to this, the Indian Ocean region is mostly considered as acoustically shallow. That means that the SOFR channel, which is required for the like the ambient or loss-free kind of wave propagation, is very much deeper. So this leads to a degradation in the acoustic sonar performance to around just to 60 to 70%. Moreover, there are a lot of marine habitat. There are a lot of say undersea cables as well, and a lot of human activities are also going on. The port operations as well. These again result in a multi-part propagation affecting the acoustics wave propagation also. So all of this the anthropogenic and the climatic condition lead to very unique phenomena which are not like seen in other regions of the world. Now, when we talk about sediment management, we have unique the sediment deposition, the sediment dynamics is there. This raises dredging concerns because again, due to the extreme monsoonal events as well, extreme droughts as well, a lot of sediment might be inflown in just a few months period. Now this raises extreme problem in the navigational channels as well. We also need to understand what is the sediment seabed classification in this case, uh, uh, and then how the monitoring and prediction of the sediment dynamics is happening, understanding what is the river and sediment transport. So all of these are the major aspect that the sediment management would cover. When we talk about the port management, if there is an unchecked or unmanaged sediment flow, so as you can see, it may lead to an excessive amount of sediment being transported into the into the sea, not through the basin or through the estuaries, and then this is also amplified by the excessive vessel movements. How the propeller, the movement of the propellers and all affect the sediment redeposition, because once for a particular region dredging is required and dredging is done, but then due to the lack of studies of how the say due to the various vessel movement, this sediment might be redeposited in that region again. That would again lead to have we need to again have proper studies of how the sediment dynamics is happening at that particular location. In fact, with the rising the climate changes there, rising sea levels are there, and then this leads to we have the El Nina and the La Nina condition, how the near shore circulation is changing. All of this has effects on the we have the longshore drift of the sediments as well. Now, this not only has effects on the port operations, but due to excessive, say, erosion of the sediments, there might be beach erosion as well, and due to the intermixing of the various sediments, sediment characteristics might change. So, say for a particular season, dredging has occurred, but then due to the various conditions, there might be sediment mixing due to erosion or other sediment inflow. The sediment characteristics might change, and that requires another kind of study before you conduct dredging for the next season and all. So the sediment flow is highly dynamic in nature, and that needs to be accounted based on the seasonal variation, based on the time of the year. As you can see, that due to sedimentation, a lot of navigational channels. This is the Kolkata port. So how the Hooghly River transports sediments. When we talk about the monsoonal system, we know that from the river flows through the Himalayan region, and how the activities that are there in the upstream side, a lot of deforestation might have happened due to some infrastructure development, uh, or say there might be some dams, and the release of water through dams might release some excessive sediment inflow. So how is that accounted for? Again, studies are required in that. Then, as I mentioned, shoreline changes, erosion is one of the most crucial threat, which again not only to the coastal morphology but to the people living across the coastline as well. We have shoreline erosion in the coast of Gujarat, coast of Tamil Nadu. Again, a lot of our coast is vulnerable uh, to the climate change. Then we have a lot of cyclones coming through the eastern coast as well. That also leads to erosion or leads to some very extreme sediment influx. This not only damages the marine the infrastructure, that the port infrastructure, but also has effects on the livelihood. It would lead to migration. So you can see there are a lot of socio-economic challenges as well. Then when we talk about the river and sediment transport, so the Indian rivers contribute around 15 to 20% of the global sediment flux into the Indian Ocean region. So you can see in this figure also it's so much significant that so much sediment influx is there. But even though there is no proper extensive studies to see how what are the various activities that affect the sediment influx, because it not only depends on the climatic conditions, but on the various inland conditions as well. What are the developments that have been happening in the upstream side and in the downstream side as well. So what happens is, due to this uncontrolled sediment flux, there might be variation in the depth of the navigational channels. Now this reduces the accessibility of the vessels. Certain vessels might which require larger draft might not be able to access these navigational channels. Excessive siltation is always a major issue. And then what happens is, most of the river water is diverted for other applications, say for agriculture, for irrigation. That so that the maintain of the water depth is not properly maintained. That again impedes the navigation in that particular stretch of water. And then there are the geographical constraints, be which leads to excessive sedimentation due to just a small amount of flow. Moreover, when there is excessive sedimentation, we need to perform dredging, but we don't look into what are the side effects of dredging, what are the negative effects of dredging on the ecology, the marine ecology. Now, if there are industries located nearby the water, the navigational channels, this sediment might get polluted. Now, due to dredging, this sediment gets resuspended. Once the sediments are resuspended, the pollutants also are suspended in the water stream. Now, this increases the turbidity. Now, this turbidity leads to an increase in the suspended solids of the particular water body. This has effects on the spawning and breeding of the fisheries. If there are pollutants, then there might be a chance of the of bioaccumulation as well. Disease proliferation might also happen. So it has impacts on the fisheries and aquaculture. And then finally, the pollutants might enter the food web, and then they impact the human health as well. So again, we can see the marine ecology and then human health. So these are all tied together. Then for the development of the coastal infrastructure, we have a lot of mangroves. But for the coastal, again, when we see for ports, or you have seen the current news for the I think in Mumbai, for the coastal road, again some mangroves needs to be cut down. Now mangroves play a crucial role in controlling the water levels. They again, they may trap the sediments as well, control the water fluctuating water level. But once these are cut down for any kind of development, the water is just free to flow. There might be extreme flooding situations as well, extreme inflow of sediment. Again, that is an issue for the navigational channels, for the local ecology that is there. So that's again, studies are required on, or we need to have more sustainable solutions instead of cutting down mangroves. Do we have another sustainable solutions? So what are the current constraints is that, again, we do not have proper institution arrangement to see how the sediment flows, because it requires coordination between multiple agencies. We have the Inland Waterway Dredging Corporation of India, various port operators, we have the Ministry of Jal Shakti, the Central Water Commission. So all of these, a coordinated approach is required. And then what are its effects on this, basically on the socio-economics? Where is the capacity gaps that are lying? If there is a skill development issue, what are that needs to be addressed? So where are the opportunities that lie in the sediment management domain? So we will talk about dredging optimization, how the sediment trap, alternative solutions to trap sediment would be there. How can we monitor basically the spatial and temporal variation of the sediments? Uh, so with the rise in the AI and the Internet of Things technology, we could use the IoT based sensors in dredging, and what these can release real time information, also about information about the performance of the dredgers, the efficiency, fuel efficiency. And also we could look into how the seabed is actually looking at in real time, because in dredging, one of the major tasks is quantifying how the amount of dredging. So dredging contract might be given for a particular amount, for a particular volume, but how do we actually look into that needs to be seen. So again, that requires the development of autonomous systems as well. uh, I'll just skip through it. Yeah. So another thing is the development of coastal infrastructure, green coastal infrastructure. Basically, we have sediment traps, traps or green belts that might control the excessive sediment erosion. Uh, these green techniques, hard structures might be employed. Again, that requires another specific studies. Pilot projects might be required. So when we talk about the dead sediments, we should look into how it can be used as a resource. So the dead sediment, once we have proper engineering studies done, the chemical and biological properties done, we can reuse them. In agriculture, we can use it in infrastructure for fill as a land reclamation. We have the sand. Again, a lot of sand can be replaced by such dead sediments if feasible. So we can look into how the dead sediment can play a role in the local economy as well. Again, if we can use the dead sediments, we have the local communities that can use. So if the sediments are rich in silt, we can develop ceramics out of it. We can have bricks out of them. That might again, the local communities can be taught how they can be given training on that. For that, we also need proper skill development centers, action plans of how to support the local communities. And then how can the sediment management act as a tool for regional cooperation? If we have proper sediment monitoring systems in place, we have proper understanding of the tropical regions, we can develop our own acoustic systems, our own hardware that are catered to the unique characteristics. And then these can be later on incorporated into the marine special planning as well. So Sridhar sir also talked about simulation-based marine special planning, development of blue economic policies. We can include the role of sediment management in them, and then within the IORA and the BIMSTEC, we could include them so as to have a regional participation. And basically, how this would lead to an upliftment of the coastal communities as well. So it would have a socio-economic impact as well. And then we have the Atmanirbhar as well. If we are able to develop our own hardwares, basically we need to not rely on the Western firmware anymore. It would save our foreign exchange as well. So for this, we have the 2C to understand and 2-share kind of model. So the 2C would look into the hardware development. To understand would be the data processing, that is understanding what kind of processing would be required to basically filter out whatever noise is coming in the raw data due to the various multipart propagation or due to ambient noise. And then how can we share the data between the various stakeholders? As Sridhar sir also talked about, we have a modeling based MSP. So we could have basically modeling of sediments in various crucial areas, so that we could see how it basically the flow of sediment is affected due to the changing say temperature or climate change, or how the various parameters are changing. And then we can also have the various stakeholders. Basically, what we need to look into is the digital transformation. That is the role of the GIS, that is the geographic informative systems, remote sensing, satellite based monitoring of sediments to track the sediment flow over a large period of time. You could have automated data collection and analysis using the automated data collection systems, role of IoT based sensors. And then a centralized sediment repository can be created, which would include the various biochemical characteristics of the sediment that can be used for, say, dredging purposes or the reusing of them. And then again, we have the integration of MSP. And then the final thing is we could also have proper online courses for the skill development of the local communities. How can they look into the local dynamics of the sediment? The MRC has also launched the sediment management course, which looks into the various aspects of sediment management in say Sagar also, and other aspects of urban development of benthic ecosystem. Such online courses can cater to a large audience across the globe, and again, this could also be used as a soft power for India. So finally, what we require is a user, academia, and industry cooperation to develop sediment-related capabilities in the region. A lot of pilot projects are required for the proof of concepts, and then integrated policies between the various authorities. We have the maritime boards, the coastal management authorities, inland waterways authority of India. Integrated policies are required for a sustainable sustainable sediment related infrastructure development. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. So that was Romit. He is a research fellow at the Maritime Research Center. And next, we should move on to the next presenter, who's Pradnaya Kumbhare. She's again a research fellow at the Maritime Research Center. So I'd call upon Pradnya to make a presentation, and her topic is related to acoustic fingerprinting in maritime security and resource management.
Hello everyone, good evening. I'm Pradnya Kumbhare, an MRC Fellow and undergraduate at IIT Bombay. Today I'll be presenting on National Policy Framework for Acoustic Fingerprinting in Maritime Governance with a focus on comprehensive underwater domain awareness perspective. Let's begin with the basic of what is acoustic fingerprinting. So acoustic fingerprinting is the technique that identifies and characterizes underwater sediment by analyzing how sound wave interact with properties like grain size, composition, and moisture content. It serves as a non-invasive and efficient alternative to traditional sediment sampling methods with applications like in dredging, harbor maintenance, offshore engineering, and biodiversity mapping. Now, why is it important? So in India, there's a heavy siltation in river and coastal zones that has led to massive erosion with severely impacting navigation, port operation, and marine ecosystems. Now, these challenges are especially critical in tropical regions where sediment dynamics are intense and unpredictable. That's why acoustic fingerprinting is not just a scientific tool, it's a serious issue that demands national attention. It's a key to support India's Sagar vision, enabling maritime security, environmental protection, and sustainable ocean development. Moving to the application and strategic relevance. So acoustic fingerprinting has a lot of applications, like in sediment management. It helps track sediment movement in river, deltas, and coastal zones. For infrastructure planning, it is used to access seabed stability for projects like wind farms, undersea cables, and oil rig. It also supports marine ecosystem mapping, which is key to biodiversity conservation. Now, in dredging and navigation, it helps to improve precision, thus enhancing the port operation and navigability. Strategically speaking, uh, it directly supports the Sagar vision, promoting regional cooperation and sustainable maritime practices. It also enhances UDA, enabling real-time data-driven monitoring for marine environments. And it strengthens the maritime security, helping to detect unauthorized vessels for underwater threats. Moving to the UD and tropical challenges. So our rivers like Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Godavari, they carry extremely high sediment loads due to monsoonal flow and dynamic hydrology. This leads to rapid erosion, siltation, and deposition that affects navigation, reservoir health, and even increases the flood risk. Now, these sediments also impact the marine ecosystems, including coral reefs, fisheries, and port operations. Acoustic fingerprinting under a UDF framework, it enables real-time sediment tracking and environmental assessments. Now, combining this with AI and satellite data can dramatically enhance predictive modeling for both sediment transport and ecosystem monitoring. Moving to the national investments, so India is already making significant investments in these fields, like DRDO and private industries are advancing in sonar technologies for defense and environmental purposes. Organizations like NIOT, NCPOR, they are actively deploying underwater sensors. The Ministry of Earth Sciences as well is funding projects that combine acoustic and AI for smarter analysis. There are institutes like IITs and INCOIS that are building classification tools for seabed and biodiversity studies. Even startups and offshore energy companies are investing in acoustic technology for renewable infrastructure and seabed monitoring. Now, this shows a strong momentum, but to fully leverage this technology, we need better coordination and policy support. So despite all these progresses, there are significant policy gaps. Like there is no unified policy. We lack a a national framework that governs acoustic fingerprinting across sectors like defense, science, and industries. There is no structured way to share acoustic data among various stakeholders. There are multiple agencies that operate independently, and this causes the problem of duplication and inefficiencies. There are no national standards for data acquisition or processing, and existing defense and environmental policies, they don't yet incorporate acoustic fingerprinting for border applications like illegal fishing or environmental monitoring. These gaps, they limit a full potential of acoustic fingerprinting in maritime governance. So what can be done? These are some key recommendations. By establishing a national acoustic data network led by MOES, the Navy, NIOT, or INCOIS can help a lot. Secondly, public-private partnership. So encouraging R&D through tax benefits, grants, and incentives to foster the technologies is another recommendation. Data sharing and framework. So creating a secure tiered system for sharing data among defense, scientific, and industrial stakeholders can also help. Involving BIS and research bodies to create national standards for acoustic data acquisition and analysis is another one. Incorporating acoustic fingerprinting into maritime security and fisheries management, especially for illegal fishing detection and habitat conservation, is another recommendation. Yes, with this I come to an end. Thank you.
Thanks, Pradnya. Thanks for your presentation. I think next we can move on to the next speaker for today. We have with us Dr. Radhika Seshan. A little bit about Dr. Radhika Seshan. She retired as a professor and head of Department of History at Savitribai Phule Pune University. I think that she's still associated with Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts in Pune. Her area of specialization is medieval Indian history, within which she has concentrated on the economic history, especially maritime and urban history. So, and she has a lot of books and articles and research paper to her credits that ma'am has written in the past, and she continues to write. So over to you, ma'am, for your kind remarks.
Thank you, Nisha, and thank you, Das, for inviting me to be part of this. The presentations by the interns were very, very interesting. So congratulations to the interns on doing a good job. Now, as always, I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a history person. And so while I understand and appreciate the connection, the emphasis on technology, on understanding the nature of current use, there are, I think, three aspects that I would like to also bring in. One is something that has been talked about for a while, which is that of community involvement. The issue over here is, I think, twofold. One is the issue of the communities themselves, as in there are, this is something that has come out of some of my recent research on the weaving communities. Many of the youngsters are not interested in getting into the traditional areas at the moment. Somewhere we are falling short of emphasizing the involvement of the community in not just the technology, but also in the relevance of technology to livelihood. It is still taken for granted that technology is to do with medicine, engineering, but the what we used to call when many years ago community science is something that needs to be emphasized. What then is community science about? It is to do with, first, the knowledge, the accumulated knowledge of generations, the understanding to the current generation of the value of that knowledge, and therefore not in terms of a dead heritage, but of a continued living livelihood choice. That, I think, is the first area that we need to emphasize. because there is a phenomenal amount of knowledge that is available. I have talked on earlier occasions of the, well, we just had this last presentation on sedimentation. There was the last time I talked about how the community near one of the rivers in Tamil Nadu was talking about how silly it was to start dredging at high tide because it was self-defeating. If you think about it logically, it makes sense because at high tide, the sediment is just going to rush back into the river. The other is a fact, again, talking of sedimentation, the fact that all of our rivers are so dammed that there is very little sediment coming down. What then happens to the underwater of those rivers? Khambat, the Gulf of Khambat, today has far less silting than it used to even 60 years ago. There was a time when it was said that the tidal bore of the Gulf of Khambat was what made sure that the Khambat area remained free of silt. Today, that bore is still there, but there is so much building that's happening that sedimentation is now moving further down the coast and blocking other areas. Older ports have had a problem, have had trouble. These are definitely aspects that need to be considered a lot more. Yet another dimension that needs to be understood is that of how we look at the idea of heritage. What defines heritage? Heritage is invariably seen as built heritage. But we need to remember that there is an intangible heritage which is equally important. By intangible heritage, I mean the awareness of the community of its own knowledge, of its own abilities, of its own engagements, and then the link between these engagements and multiple areas. Increasingly, maybe of late it's a little less, but still the tendency was very often to leave the community behind and carry on to the urban areas. And this is where I would come into port development. Today we are looking at ports. We are looking at a public-private engagement for ports, which we have been for a very long time. We are looking, again, for a very long time, we have been looking at special economic zones. What precisely do these provide to the communities around? Is there a connect with the communities that have engaged, or a total disconnect? These are questions that have not yet been raised. How does the community relate to what is happening around them? We have, of course, the case in a land-based case of the Sinner paper factory and the way in which the community reacted to that, and to the ways in which, because of the involvement of the community, that factory was forced to shut down, and their concern was the pollution of the waters. At Krishnapatnam on the Andhra coast, there has been a problem with the fisher folk because, thanks to the development at that port, the water there became so polluted that the fisher folk did not manage to get a living. They then moved further south towards Chennai, and there were frequent conflicts between the Tamil Nadu fishermen and the Andhra Pradesh fishermen because of what they call poaching on the grounds. How does one address these issues? I understand and always do appreciate the need for development, but maritime security, maritime engagement, maritime power cannot be at the cost of community development. We need to have all of that going hand in hand. And that is where I think an engagement with the community becomes much more relevant. How do we engage with the community in terms of first knowledge, second, the valuing of that knowledge rather than the negation, third, the broader context of making this knowledge available across the board to a variety of people who are not engaged with this at all and who have by and large tended to dismiss this as knowledge. Let me take, for instance, the basic thing which all the naval people here will know, the idea of the compass rose and the wind roses. What is a compass rose? What is a wind rose? These are very easy terms to talk about, but who knows what they exactly mean? Why can it not be taught as part of the courses? I will go back actually to what Dr. Rao is saying, the need for greater studies that focus on maritime studies as a broad context. We tend to talk of maritime technology, maritime power as maritime studies. Where, and here is where the history part of it comes in, where is the historical dimension? Who were the communities that traditionally engaged with these areas? Where is the mapping of the movement of these communities? Where is the mapping of the knowledge of these communities? None of this has happened. Moving beyond this, there is also a cultural context. We all know the temple bells and the church bells. Who made the bells? Where is the metallurgy? Who engaged metallurgy? We've got also, historically, we've got any number of coastal worship patterns and coastal music. Where is this being mapped? This is as much part of the maritime world as the technology and the engagement with the seas. Not to deny, like I said before, the importance of the technological and the technical interventions into understanding the spaces. But the spaces have first a human content. That human content is cultural, spatial, economic, social. All of this needs to be understood, put in place in order to be able to understand how, where, when, why. That is, to me, the true heritage. So we need to go into knowledge, reclaiming knowledge, not knowledge which is, well, sorry to be rude, but WhatsApp University variety of knowledge, which gives a lots of loud, high-sounding phrases without any content whatsoever. I'm not talking about that kind of knowledge. I'm talking about engaging at multiple levels, multiple generations. Generations have seen changes. What changes? What have they identified as a change? And not to do with just a throwaway phrase, nahi, zamana badal gaya hai. Okay, fine, it has to change. It better change, otherwise there's something wrong with the zamana if it does not change. But beyond that, what precisely has changed? If there is change, the identification of change is also located in continuity. Where is the continuity? What are the areas in which the community see continuity? Have the winds changed? To some extent, yes. Have the monsoon winds changed? Again, to some extent, maybe. How do the fisherfolk understand the ways in which the wind blows? How have they mapped the changes in wind or current direction because of A, sedimentation, because of B, pollution, or any kinds of environmental change? Have things happened? At a primary level, how are they engaging with these changes? And not in terms of conflict, in terms of engaging with the oceans. This is equally applicable to the rivers. We don't have ferries any longer, we have bridges. What has happened to the rivers as a result of bridges? In fact, the arguments that were made during the presentation on sedimentation were some of the most important, I think, that have been done. What happens with sedimentation at the bridges? What happens to the underwater life at the bridges? Have we studied that? What is the impact of traffic movement, whether vehicular or train, on these bridges, on the underwater acoustic systems? What is the impact of the constant movement itself on people or on the underwater domain? All of these need to be understood, approached, and studied. I think I'll stop my presentation there. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Radhika. Indeed, a wonderful presentation and keynote address by you and Bangladesh. So next is my presentation, and this is the concluding presentation. And after that, we'll have Ambassador Mudgal to make his like closing remarks. So to make my presentation, I'll quickly share my screen. Yes. Now that we've heard from most of the speakers about, how Sagar vision is aligned with UDA and various parameters and various aspects of underwater domain awareness, be it the sustainable blue economy or sediment management or climate change aspect, which was supposed to be made by one of my colleagues, Akash Prasad, who could not make it to today's webinar, but his recording is going to go live on YouTube because he sent his recorded video with all of us. So all these aspects have been shared. But right now, what I'm going to summarize and what I'm going to talk about is what is the way forward for the UDA vision to be implemented in alignment with the Sagar vision. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nishtha, and I head the Communications and Outreach Department at the Maritime Research Center. And the topic of my presentation for today is the Way Forward 100 Warriors Initiative. So contents that are going to be covered in my presentation includes everything about the 100 Warriors Initiative. I will also be speaking about the major challenges that are faced by the coastal and riverine communities. Besides, I would also help you understand, how the alignment between the Sagar vision happens with the 100 Warriors Initiative. And I will be concluding my presentation by telling you about the implementation of the pilot project on ground. Like I mentioned, what is 100 Warriors Initiative? For that, we first need to understand that this initiative has been crafted and developed by the Maritime Research Center. It has been ideated and conceptualized by the internal team members of the Maritime Research Center, who were all led by the founder and director of MRC, Dr. Commander Arnav Das. So what is the focus of this initiative? It focuses on strengthening. So the basic idea behind the 100 Warriors Initiative is the fact that it focuses on strengthening the livelihoods of the coastal, riverine, and water resource dependent communities. So we do have the concept notes for how the coastal warriors can be implemented, the 100 river warriors can be implemented, and how the 100 water warriors can be implemented, these initiatives. But this combined initiative we've called as 100 Warriors Initiative, which includes, strengthening the livelihoods of the coastal communities, the riverine communities, and the water resource dependent communities. So moving on, what is the goal of this project? The main goal of this project is to provide these communities with relevant skills and trainings. Because basically, this is what these communities lack right now on ground. And they really need a combined effort from various stakeholders to help them have the relevant skills and trainings. And this will also help them better handle challenges like climate change, unsustainable practices in the oceans, rivers, and water resource areas, and coastal erosion, economic pressures from overfishing or illegal fishing activities. And yes, I have supported this particular slide with an image which was captured by the internal team of the Maritime Research Center. And you can see in this image, we have one of the engineers, who's Shreya Vakmare, and there's Ayush also. So these guys were deployed on ground, and they were part of this field visit which happened at Ratnagiri and Guhagar coastal regions of Maharashtra, wherein the main motive of this field visit was to understand what is the gap that exists and what are the needs, and what is it that how we can benefit the coastal communities in terms of supporting them with some sort of technologies that can help them with shrimp and seaweed farming. And this field visit took place in November 2024, and the second one took place in February 2025 recently, which was held, this field visit was in Viraval, which is one of the coastal areas of Gujarat. So in today's slide, I'm going to be using a lot of these images, like the on-ground images which the team had taken or captured during their field visit, because I feel that the 100 Warriors initiative is very much in alignment with the field visit that we have conducted in the past, and with support from Clima Crew and Excel Industries. Moving on, who are the major beneficiaries of this project? It's very simple. The major beneficiaries are the coastal communities, the riverine communities, and the water resource dependent communities are the three major beneficiaries that we foresee as the beneficiaries of the 100 Coastal Warriors. And to my right, you can again see two different images, which were again captured by my colleagues, Shreya and Ayush, wherein you can see, the coastal communities busy with doing something with the seaweed and shrimp. Seaweed, basically. So now I would like to focus on a very startling data, which is going to set the tone for the rest of the presentations that I'm going to make about what are the major challenges that these coastal communities are facing in our country currently. So 45% of the Gujarat's 1600 kilometer coastline is experiencing erosion. And this has been reported by the International Collective in support of fisher folks. This is an institution called as short for ICSF. And they also claim that this erosion affects 10 out of 13 coastal districts in the state, including districts such as Kutch, Jamnagar, Bharuch, and Valsad. So you can see like the amount of damage that has been done to the coastline of Gujarat because of the coastal erosion. So this is why there's a need for projects like 100 Coastal Warriors to come into picture so as to support. So now dictating the major challenges that are there are climate change, overfishing, displacement of the coastal communities, and the territorial disputes. And this is where initiatives like 100 Warriors are essential to maintaining the balance between growth, security, and cultural preservations in these regions. Just before my presentation, it was Dr. Radhika Seshan who gave a very insightful, kind remarks on the traditional knowledge and the historical aspect or the maritime heritage aspect of UDA. So in this slide, I particularly want to emphasize the fact that, these communities, the coastal communities or the riverine communities or the water dependent communities, we should call them as the custodians of the traditional knowledge. So because they have these indigenous communities possess sophisticated knowledge system regarding marine ecosystem. They are called as the custodians of the traditional knowledge, which was passed down for generations, and they are the ones who promote. And through these knowledge, their idea is to promote biodiversity conservation and sustainable livelihoods. However, there are various challenges that these communities are facing, some of which I have explained in the previous slides, including climate change and unsustainable practices or overfishing and illegal trade practices in the sea route areas and all. But other challenges, the policy related challenges that these communities face include challenges from external economic forces or the government policies or modernization, the so-called modernization. And this is where the 100 Coastal Warriors is not just, dependent on bringing out or coming out with yet another modern technology or yet another modern, way of trying to protect the coast or the rivers or the water resources that are available in our country or the countries beyond. But we also want to, this 100 Warriors initiative is very much in alignment with the traditional ecological knowledge, which the custodians for which are these communities, into the modern conservation efforts. So here we're not saying that we will not focus on the modern efforts at all, but the idea of the 100 Warriors initiative, which has been conceptualized by MRC, I would re-emphasize this fact, is that we are combining the traditional knowledge with the modern conservation efforts. This project aims to preserve these cultural practices while ensuring economic stability also. So as you can see to the right side of my presentation, these are, again, some of the images that have been captured by the research engineer from Maritime Research Center, Mr. Ayush Sawant. So here you can see Shreya Wagmare from MRC. He's showcasing one of the digital tools that has been developed by the Maritime Research Center. This tool is called as the APY tool. So this particular visit had two main objectives. One was to understand, the livelihoods of the coastal communities, and second was to validate the APY tool that has been developed in-house by NDT and MRC combined. So here in this image, you can see that Shreya is actually interacting with the locals, and he's explaining to them how the APY tool works. And it is still in making, it is still in progress. Certain finalizations have to be done. And then, this particular tool can be deployed and it can help and it can benefit. The whole idea of coming out with this tool is to benefit the farmers community of the coast. So the APY is short for Area Production Yield Tool. Yeah. Next, how does this project align with the Sagar vision? Because today's presentation or today's webinar is all about commemorating the 10 years of Sagar vision. Let me help you understand the fact that this 100 Warriors initiative is very much in alignment with the Sagar vision, because both of them care for sustainable resource management. Both the projects, the Sagar vision and the 100 Warriors initiative, promote resilience to climate change and natural disasters. Both these projects focus on regional security and cooperation, because when the moment it comes to the coastal communities, then of course regional security and cooperation becomes very, very important. And both these projects, one which is a Government of India's project, and the second one which we are planning to put out, which is 100 Warriors initiative, both support the coastal economy and social development of the coastal communities, plus the social development of the riverine communities and the communities which are dependent on water resources. Yes, again, another beautiful image which was captured, and I'll move on. So now that we've spoken about now that we know about what the 100 Warriors initiative is, how does it align with Sagar vision? What are the major challenges that these communities have been facing? And the idea that we really want to, and the fact that we also had a field visit in the first one in Maharashtra, the coast of Maharashtra, and the second one in the coast of Gujarat. Now, I would like to talk to you about the implementation of this project on ground. And so basically from now onwards, my slides are going to cover the ground implementation of the 100 Warriors initiative. So this implementation is going to happen through our basic approach of policy intervention, technology intervention, and capacity and capability building. So first, coming down to the policy intervention bit. So there are various steps that are going to be covered in the policy intervention bit. Again, I would first talk about the image that you can see on the screen, wherein our team can be seen interacting with the government officials who were there in the coastal area of Maharashtra called Ratnagiri and Guhagar, one of the places. So they interacted with the government officials to understand what is it that the government is already doing, and where is the policy gap happening. So this was the major thing that the team wanted to understand. So as part of the policy intervention, I would say the step one is initiating and maintaining dialogues with relevant stakeholders, including community members, industry experts, and policymakers. The step two for making policy intervention to happen is, based on the initial talks and analysis, 100 Warriors will collectively come out with a policy brief suggesting modifications to the existing policies. So the 100 Warriors will have numerous 100 people who will be involved in various activities. So a few of them will be from the background of policy, or who understand the policy aspect well. So they will be the one who will be working on coming out with the policy brief, and they will suggest the modification. The second is, the third step will be to propose the strategies for creating and implementing policies that are both effective and sustainable. And the step 4 would be environmental impact assessment formulation that would holistically look at the impacts on the environment while also considering the socio-economic factors. Moving on, for the technology intervention, as you can see, this was also an example of the technology intervention, wherein the team can be seen showcasing the tool to the people on ground. So step one is definitely that we will identify the problems where the technology can be a solution. Step 2 would be integrate technology into existing solutions. Step 3 will be to develop and implement technology solutions. And finally, the step 4 would be promotion of marine spatial planning schemes for data-driven policy making, a topic which was very comprehensively covered by my colleague Sridhar in his previous presentation. So, and the final aspect that requires the attention for the 100 Warriors initiative to happen will be capacity and capability building. And yes, so this image was captured during one of the interactions that the team had with the local communities from Viraval recently in the month of February, wherein you can see the founder and director of MRC, Dr. Das, and Deputy Director Sridhar Prabhuraman. Both of them are taking a session with the team, with the coastal community, and sharing and hearing their things, hearing the challenges that the fisherfolk community face, and giving solutions, trying to give solutions to them. So as part of the capacity and capability building, I think the first step is 2C, wherein these candidates will be, so the candidates who are going to be part of the 2C team will be part of deployment team. They will make sure that all the data is securely shared with the data analytics team, which is basically the 2Understand team. So 2Understand team will include candidates who will be part of the data processing team, and they will build models that draw important inferences from the data. And finally, we will have the 2Share team, and these are the candidates who will be part of the development team, who will carry out the application development, the Android app development and the web development to disseminate this necessary information to the masses. And yes, with this, thank you so much for your kind attention, and I hope the presentation proved to be valuable for all of us. And yeah, thanks a lot. I think with this we can go on to the final final remarks from Ambassador Anup Kumar Mudgal. Sir, welcome, sir, and we look forward to your remarks. A little bit about Ambassador Mudgal. He is a former Indian diplomat who is who is also part of the FICCI's Blue Economy policy currently. So, and he has been part of the MRC's journey since a long time now, and Sir's contribution to MRC has been humongous. So, over to you, Anup sir, for your final remarks.
Thank you, Nishtha. So once again, an excellent conference. In a way, some of the presentations were like eye-openers for many of us. But today's theme, this UDA and Sagar, I thought I will go back to the simple basics. Because sometimes when we discuss about details, we tend to miss the fundamental basis why we are doing it. Yes. Now, when Sagar was being discussed, there were different forces which were trying to pull the whole concept one way or the other. And basically, there were three major forces. And these were the economic benefits, and the economic benefits coming in conflict with two potential other forces: security and sustainability. Yes. The primary goal, Sagar, security and growth for all. In fact, I remember at one point, just to simplify what we had in mind, I said it's nothing but the slogan, Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. Yes. If you translate that concept to the ocean space, it becomes Sagar. Yes. The primary goal of society, is what? I have said it on many occasions in the past. I will say it again. It's basically good life, isn't it? We are seeking good life for our people. And for that matter, every country, every society is seeking good life for the people. Yes. Now, the good life, in fact, primarily comes through access to economic resources and the capacity to harness those resources. If you have access to resources, then if you have the capacity to harness those resources, then it automatically creates a pathway to prosperity and good life. Yes. But I wish, the world was as simple as I'm trying to say. Yes, it's not as simple. This whole pathway then faces a lot of challenges by way of options and conflict. And those I will categorize, to keep my argument simple, in two categories. One is the conventional security threat. For example, if a war breaks out, nobody will talk about sustainability. Nobody will talk about the goals of prosperity. When war breaks out, all the bets are off. Yes. Therefore, Sagar basically is a peacetime effort for preventing conflict. Yes. Can we prevent conflict? Because prevention of conflict, in my view, is equivalent or even more than winning a conflict. Because for winning a conflict, still you suffer damage and loss. But for prevention of conflict, you avoid both these, but you achieve your goal of prosperity and good life. Now, how do we prevent? I will not go into the naval part of it because this has already been discussed in very great detail. The conventional security issues, be it the warfare, be it piracy, be it, human trafficking, weapon trafficking, drug trafficking, all kinds of things, right? That is one part. Now, in my view, when it comes to domain awareness, that domain is much better understood. Yes. That domain is much better understood because it is mostly on the surface of the sea. And today we have technology which can provide us eyes and ears to see what's happening on the surface of the ocean. And as a result, we see the red flags with a greater ease. And as a result, we are able to prevent. Yes. But a much deeper problem, in my view, today, if you want, we could have gone into details of, the conventional security threats and how, our effort at, domain awareness could help prevention. The bigger challenge for us is the sustainability conflict or sustainability disruption, which also has an important aspect of security, in fact. Now, how do we prevent these conflicts? Because these conflicts occur in time and space. It occurs in that space and time, right? Now, if we do not understand the space and time, we would not have the capacity to prevent potential conflict or disruption. Now, that is Sagar, which means what? The best way out to prevent a conflict is cooperation, which means shared prosperity, shared efforts. And that is at the core of Indian policy, right from the beginning, in fact. We offered to our partners everywhere, not only neighborhood, but even beyond, right from the beginning, that, okay, if we have certain capabilities which you think could help you, we will be more than willing to share that capability with you. Now, once you are willing to share your capability and capacity with your partners, that generates the mutual trust. And mutual trust is the strongest tool for avoidance of conflict. The conflict arises when the trust breaks down. That is Sagar. Security is growth for all. Now, if all are involved, it is based on the foundation of cooperation, working together, teamwork. And especially when it comes to the ocean affairs. In ocean, both the opportunities and challenges are cross-border. The ocean doesn't respect borders. So if there are opportunities, they are cross-border. If there are challenges, they are cross-border. And as a result, the solution or the prevention of conflict also needs to be cross-border. And that is at the foundation of Sagar. Wherever we go, be it the Indo-Pacific construct, or now the Mahasagar concept, or even a larger global thing, basically our approach is, if you're able to cooperate, you will be able to prevent conflict. Yes? So when it comes to the sustainability part underwater, because in oceans, a lot of potential conflicts take underwater. Now, if a process is visible to us, we can see it, we can hear it, we can touch it, it's much easier to find a solution in avoiding conflict. But the underwater domain is something which is neither visible to us, nor is audible to us, nor strictly speaking is touchable, and we can't even touch, feel it. It's beyond a feeling. Yes? And that is the effort, Arnav, which you are doing in a smaller scale. It can't be a global scale, for God's sake. Because most of when we talk about oceans, most of those conflicts arise in a localized manner, in a regional manner. There is nothing called a global conflict which will occur tomorrow. Yes, this is a very rare phenomenon. It may occur on land. Yes. So these are localized regional conflicts. For example, when you hear about the potential of AMAC collapse or ACC collapse, now these are regional phenomena, right? So, in fact, I read a report which says even the impact of global health or impact of ocean health on global warming is also localized. It is not one fit all. Certain regions will feel or face much greater threat of climate change vis-a-vis other regions. Now, if the problem and disruption is localized, I'm sure the solution will also have to be localized. We have to find that understanding within those locations and then understanding the domain for suggesting a solution for avoiding a conflict. Now, these are basically the building blocks. You see, a large building can collapse when a block is taken out. Yes? Now, for building those blocks, we must understand the space. And for understanding the space, we need to do what MRC is doing. Understand this space, create those building blocks of solutions, and go and tell people, look, we have the information. These are the building blocks for avoiding conflicts. You agree? We are willing to share with you. You don't agree, too bad. Yes? We have no magic wand of saying, all right, today onwards, everybody will listen to us. They will not, they may not. But does it prevent us from saying what is right? We at a smaller level will keep working on these aspects, keep telling others what we think based on empirical data, what is right and where are the potential red flags for conflict, and also telling that this is the capacity we have which can help prevent those conflicts. You think you trust us, take it. You don't trust, forget it. Yes? So cooperation cannot be forced, because if you force it, it's not cooperation. Cooperation is an agreement amongst the willing. But the willingness depends on your goodwill of truthfully sharing your capabilities and capacity. And that is at the foundation of India's Development Assistance Program, DPA, Development Partnership Administration. It's all right, you come over, it's a democratic open country. Look at us, what we do, what we have. If you think there is something useful, we are willing to share with you. And this is precisely the basis of what MRC is doing. It's an open book. Okay, if you think there is something useful for you, we are willing to share with you. Right? So I think we should really continue working with this idea in mind, that the ultimate goal is welfare of people. These are all the means of that goal of welfare and good life, right? Now, good life cannot be imposed on anyone. You want to take it, take it. You do not want to take it, don't take it. Thank you very much. Yes, with these words I stop. Yeah, I really appreciate what you all are doing, and we have to project this as building blocks to a larger solution to conflict avoidance. Yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Anup sir. Thank you for your kind remarks. As like final part of this webinar, I would request Arnab sir to make the final comments and then we can close. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishta. I think we forgot to introduce Anup sir. 10 years back, when Sagar Vision was announced in Mauritius, sir was India's ambassador, High Commissioner at Mauritius. So he has been part of the team which drafted the whole Sagar Vision. So, sir, thank you so much for your continued support and mentoring for us. And your comments definitely have a lot of value. And I must also acknowledge here that this webinar was part of the special edition that we are building for ICWA. This is a special edition with all the 12 papers that would go into a compendium. And ICWA is well placed, and they've been very kind to accept our proposal. So MRC and ICWA will be coming out with this compendium, and I think this will add a lot of value to the whole knowledge bank. And we are soon going to take over the IORA. So I think this publication will provide the necessary inputs for the policymakers. I would, before we close, I would request Professor P.V. Rao sir and Sarabjit Parmar sir to give their quick comments on the day's proceeding. Rao sir, starting with you, please. Professor P.V. Rao sir. I think Parmar sir, if you are available, we would like you to give your quick comments.
Am I audible, please?
Okay, Rao sir, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's interesting. What I'm delighted to see is you have built up quite a bit of young scholars who have more ear to the ground, not only just from strict academic point of view, but you're sending them as teams to field work and etc. I really appreciate that one. Second thing is, this is very casual. Quite a few seminars or webinars which are conducted, they don't really bring out their publications. I appreciate you got a very clear idea of trying to bring out it as a compendium or a volume. If you think, and if it is possible, kindly send some very few guidelines to the authors like me, who are either writing or were already involved in writing, like me, the articles to your forthcoming publication. Few guidelines like the size of the paper, if any maps or any graphs, and what should be the citation style, if you really think so, so that will save your problem at the end of the receiving all the papers from the different authors. If each author is following his or her own style, you will have the difficulty of trying to coordinate again, sending them back. That kind of the ordeal you would be saved of. Thank you once again, Dr. Das, and other very young colleagues of mine who made very good presentations. Dr. Palmer, we met with a long time, at least on the screen we are able to see each other, and thank you one and all.
Captain Parmar, sir, kindly.
I think it's some brilliant presentations by your team, Arnab, and I think a lot of good work is being done, as the ambassador had pointed out. So it's very clear that we have our domestic house to put in order, number one. We need to deal with the outside constituencies beyond our borders. And as our capacities and capabilities develop and grow, we need to push the same enthusiasm outwards. And perhaps if you really want to take the UDA places, then India has to be in the driver's seat. Nobody else can take it forward, at least in the direction where we want in the IOR, and get back to so Sagar and the Mahasagar vision and ensuring stability and security. And the world will grow, but we have to be mentally prepared for certain setbacks. And if Trump 2.0 is not willing to sort of play ball in some areas, then we need to hold the racket and take it forward. And I think it's congratulations to the MRC team. Well done. Pat yourselves on the back, please.
Thank you so much, sir. I wanted to also admit that today two very important presentations could not be included here, which will be, as Nishtha said, will be included later. One is on the climate change. We have Akash, who has done reasonably good work, and also Shlok Nemani. He's a very senior fellow, research fellow with us. He has worked on the digital transformation for the coastal community. So we will be putting up their videos also in the final report, which we'll be sharing with all of you. Thank you all so much, and for participating and encouraging us all the while. Thank you so much, sir. Nishtha, great job. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Dr.
Ayush and,
Can I leave the meeting
yes, sir.
now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ayush and Shreya, good work behind the scenes for conducting this. Thank you very much. Anup sir, thank you so much once again.
See you again. Thank you so much.
You all with this, you can all sign.
Thank you, Nishtha, and everybody. Good job. Good presentations.